This is one big reason why the Israeli government loves to kill the media, because they help expose the cruelty of the Israeli government and what goes on inside the prisons. Here we have an ex an ex-Palestinian hostage who talks about how the Israeli military would beat them inside prisons.
Welcoming home a hero. But for 17-year-old Mustafa, freedom came as a surprise.
Even though I was released from prison suddenly, to this moment I don't believe it. I feel like I'm still in a dream. I don't know if I'm awake or asleep.
The reasons for his arrest earlier this year remain obscure, he says. But his release last weekend was part of the captive detainee exchange between Israel and Hamas.
In prison, I was exposed to oppressive practices and physical and psychological violence. I was not alone. Other prisoners were also subjected to the same practices. If they don't beat you, they may beat another prisoner in front of you.
Okay, so the prison guards would beat the hostages, and yet we're expected to praise the Israeli government for kidnapping people and beating them and thinking and acting like they are somehow the good guys for doing the same things the terrorist group Hamas would do to people. How are they different?
Omar was 17 3 years ago when he was arrested by Israeli forces for possessing a weapon. He says conditions behind bars got worse after October 7.
Life was difficult before October 7, but the treatment of the occupation army was completely different after October 7 and became more brutal and ferocious. They practiced physical and psychological torture and abused us. They even transferred us from one prison to another and suppressed us.
Wow, it is just disgusting to hear the abuse that these people go through, that they get tortured and stuff, no charge or trial, and yet the Israeli government is allowed to do this and not considered uh, a war criminal.
The UN defines anyone under the age of 18 a child, but not if you're Palestinian, says Omar.
This is the normal life of a Palestinian child. The Palestinian child has neither freedom nor rights. Like I said, any child my age has the ability to arrange his affairs and his life. But in Palestine, children spend 4 and 5 years of their lives only because they want to defend their land.
Now, uh, if we were to change the Israeli government to the Nazi German government and Palestinian prisoners to Jewish prisoners, and they were talking about the same thing going on, it would be there would be a major outcry about the abuses of a Nazi government uh, doing this to Jewish people. But because it's Palestinian people, it's supposed to be somehow okay for the Israeli government to be torturing kids.
A controversial Israeli military order has long been criticized for permitting the sentencing of Palestinian children under the age of 16 as adults. Rights groups say Palestinian children are the only children in the world who are systematically prosecuted in military courts, around 5 to 700 every year on average.
While 700 kids are charged by the military courts in the Israeli government. How is that considered to be sane? This is what the Nazi German government did to Jewish people, and back then that wasn't okay. So why is it okay now?
Now, after October 7, that number is on the rise. The Palestinian Prisoners Society says discrimination against Palestinians feeds a constant cycle of violence.
When we hear the testimonies of the mother, father, and child, we see the great impact of these arrests. But sometimes you realize that the child has reached a stage of living with this violence, because all of our lives are violence, torture, and abuse.
But the ever-growing occupation and death toll following Israeli raids is hardening hearts and raising stakes in these Palestinian territories. Rahul Radhakrishnan, TRT World.